Hi students, this is Evolution Part 2. So, let's go. So, what is evolution? If we define evolution, so theoretically evolution is change in the genetic composition of a population during successive generations as a result of natural selection acting on the genetic variation among individuals and resulting in the development of new species. In other words, evolution is a change over time in one or more inherited traits found in populations of individuals. Inherited traits are distinguishing characteristics, for example, anatomical, biochemical, or behavioral, that are passed on from one generation to the next. So, evolution requires variation of inherited traits within a population. So, this is evolution. Now, paleontology and evolution. What is paleontology? Actually, paleontology is the study of prehistoric life, including organisms' evolution and interactions with each other and their environments. As a historical science, it tries to explain causes rather than conduct experiments to observe effects. See, in Darwin's day, the fossil record was poorly known, but this is no longer true. A major focus for geologists is establishing the times of origin of the rock formations. This is in the crust of earth. For paleontologists, it is important to know which rock formations were formed at the same time and thus can be correlated which rocks were formed at different times, and to put the formations into a time sequence from oldest to youngest in any area under study. So fossils are key to establishing the sequence of the ages of layered sedimentary rocks, and they are the direct proof of the changes that have occurred in living organisms through time on our planet. So, during mid-1600s, Nicholas Steno, a Danish scientist, found that it was possible to establish the order in which layered rocks were deposited. He recognized that particles of sand, mud and gravel settle from a fluid according to their relative weight. Slight changes in particle size, composition or transporting agent result in the formation of layers in the rocks. These are the layers of rocks. These layers are also called beds or strata. Layering or bedding is the most obvious feature of sedimentary rocks. In any sequence of undistributed layered rocks, a given bed must be older than any bed on top of it. This is oldest from this one. So, this principle of superposition is fundamental to understanding the age of rocks. At any one place, it indicates the relative ages of the rock layers and of the fossils they contain. So, older layers of sedimentary rock, that is layers on the bottom, contain fossil species very dissimilar from the modern life. Each layer or stratum is singular, is characterized by a unique group of fossil species. So, rocks of the same age contain the same or very similar fossil species. Even when the rock units extend over a large area on the exposures are not continuous. So, three concepts are important in the study and use of fossils, and these are, first of all, what are fossils? Fossils are remain of once living organisms. Second, the vast majority of fossils are the remains of the hard parts of extinct organisms. They belong to species no longer living anywhere on earth. And third, the kinds of fossils found in rocks of different ages differ because life on earth has changed through time. So this is the youngest layer, this is the oldest layer. So as you move upward, from here to upward, you find species more and more similar to modern life. So, if we begin at the present and examine older and older layers of rock, we will arrive at a level where no human fossils are found. Here, no human fossils are found. If we continue backward in time, we successively come to layers where no fossils of birds are present, no mammals, no reptiles, no four-footed animals, no fishes, no shells and no members of the animal kingdom. The kinds of animals and plants found in fossils change through time. When we find the same kinds of fossils in rocks in different places, we know that the rocks are of the same age. So, in this type of rock, shelled animals are present. In its superposition, fishes are present. And in the layer top of it possess amphibians. And the upper layer presents organisms resemble to humans. So this is paleontology and evolution, and this is stratigraphic ranges and origins of some major groups of animals. Next comes Darwin's theory of evolution. So to clarify or to understand the principles of evolution, Charles Darwin put up the theory. And what is stated in it? He stated that species have great fertility. They make more offspring that can grow to adulthood, and populations remain roughly the same size with modest fluctuations. Next, food resources are limited but are relatively constant most of the time. In sexually reproducing species, generally no two individuals are identical, so variation is rampant, and much of this variation is inheritable. So, these are the main points of Darwin's theory of evolution. The name of Darwin's theory of evolution was natural selection. And what is it? See, in a world of stable populations where each individual must struggle to survive, those with the best characteristics will be more likely to survive, and those desirable traits will be passed to their offsprings. These advantageous characteristics are inherited by following generations, becoming dominant among the population through time. So this is natural selection. So the name of Darwin's theory of evolution was given natural selection. See, Darwin's theory of evolution is a widely held notion that all life is related and has descended from a common ancestors, that is the birds and the bananas, the fishes and the flowers, all related. Darwin's general theory presumes the development of life from non-life and stresses a purely naturalistic descent with modification. That is, complex creatures evolve from more simplistic ancestors naturally over time. In a nutshell, as random genetic mutation occur within an organism's genetic code, the beneficial mutations are preserved because they aid survival. That is a process known as natural selection. These beneficial mutations are passed on to the next generation. Over time, beneficial mutations accumulate and the result is an entirely different organism. That is not just a variation of the original, but an entirely different creature. So, natural selection acts to preserve and accumulate minor advantageous genetic mutation. Suppose a member of a species developed a functional advantage like it grew wings and learned to fly. So its offspring would inherit that advantage and pass it on to their offspring. The inferior, that is disadvantaged members of the same species would gradually die out, leaving only the superior, that is advantaged members of the species. So natural selection is the preservation of a functional advantage that enables a species to compete better in the wild. Natural selection is a naturalistic equivalent to domestic breeding. Over the centuries, human breeders have produced dramatic changes in domestic animal populations by selecting individuals to breed. Breeders eliminate undesirable traits gradually over time. Similarly, natural selection eliminates inferior species gradually over time. So, the summary of Darwin's theory is variation. That is, there is a variation in every population. Variation of genetic characteristics. Next, competition. Organisms compete for limited resources. One has to fight to survive in this earth for the limited resources. Next, offspring. Organisms produce more offspring that can survive. Genetics. Organisms pass genetic traits on to their offspring. Next, natural selection. Those organisms with the most beneficial traits are more likely to survive and reproduce. Advantaged organisms are most likely to survive and reproduce. Next, species change over time. That is, there is a mutation in the genetic code of the species. So species change over time due to environmental conditions, due to limited food resources, etc. Species allied today descendant with modification from species that lived in the past. So today's species are the mutated forms of past species. And next, all organisms on earth are united into a single family tree of life by a common descent. So these are the summary of Darwin's theory. Next come natural selection in action. Some of the examples of natural selection are the evolution of insecticide resistant insects, insects which develop immune due to rapid use of insecticide. So new strains are developed which are insecticide resistant. So this is the clear example of evolution. Next, evolution of drug resistant human immunovirus. This is also an example of evolution. Next, evolution of antibiotic resistant strains of bacteria and industrial melanism in the peppered moth. These are all the examples of natural selection in action. Let's see this figure. When continuous spray of insecticide was done in the field, then chromosome with gene conferring resistance to insecticide. So a new chromosome of the gene is formed or mutate that confer resistance to insecticide. What happens after this? The insect which develop insecticide resistant gene in it will survive and others will dead. The survived insect will give rise to their offspring, and these all offsprings are insecticide resistant insects. So this is a clear-cut example of natural selection. So these insects are able to survive themselves in the nature, that is, they combat the effect of insecticide. So they survived and give rise to their offspring. So this is a clear-cut example of natural selection. Now here are some examples from competitive examination. First one from CBSE PMT 1989, and the question is, what is evolution? Evolution is progressive development of a race, or history and development of race along with variations, or history of race, or development of race. So what will be the right answer? The right answer is evolution is history and development of race along with variations. So B is the right answer. Next question from EIPMT 2007, and the question is, industrial melanism as observed in peppered moth proves that the true black melanic forms arise by recurring random mutations, or the melanic form of the moth has no selective advantage over lighter form in industrial area, or the lighter form moth has no selective advantage either in polluted industrial area or non-polluted area, or melanism is a pollution generated feature. So what is the right answer? The right answer is the true black melanic forms arise by a recurring random mutation. Next example from CBSE PMT 1993, and the question is, theory of natural selection dwells on role of environment in evolution, natural selection acting on favorable variations, changes in gene complex resulting in heritable variations, or none of the above. So guess what is the right answer? Theory of natural selection dwells on natural selection acting on favorable variations. So B is the right answer.